All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dark Side of Entrepreneurship. And I'm really pleased today because I have got Jules White with me, who knows a thing or two about the dark side as well as the light side of entrepreneurship. Jules, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm Jules White. I live in Milton Keynes in the UK, and currently I am a sales coach, trainer, and mentor. So I help people to fall in love with sales. That's what I'm doing now. And then obviously I've got a backstory, which I guess we're going to talk about today.
Yes, absolutely. So I've watched your TEDx talk about your experience, which is quite a roller coaster of emotions. I think pretty much everything life could throw at somebody, it threw at you during that time. I know that you had a business. And
Yes.
do you want to just give us the quick run through of more or less what happened?
Yeah, sure. So I'll put it in perspective for you. So I just had my son, Sam, who is now nearly 15 years old.
Wow.
So it was the 1st of January 2005, New Year's Day baby.
Wow.
So exciting. My life changed. Anybody who's got a baby will know that. And I just fell in love with this little boy. So everything I'd ever done before was almost out the window because my life was going to be about Sam. But I soon realized that I was very driven. I'd always been working. I was very successful in sales. And, I was one of those dynamite type of people, 100 miles an hour. If I stopped and I was just mum, I actually knew that was not going to be right for me either. So I wanted to try and get a balance. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, actually, years ago, I'd done Ann Summers, right? So that's kind of the thing I always say, what's said in here stays in here. But what it did is it gave me this wonderful breadth of knowledge about Party Plan. And I looked and couldn't find anyone doing Party Plan selling baby products. And I just thought, this is crazy, because this must be a market. So I started a business called Truly Madly Baby, and it was in March 2005. So Sam was 3 months old, and it was fantastic, and I was so excited. And then I realized that the opportunity that I had for other mums was actually the real magic of this, because they could do this too. So they could still be with their baby, and then they could go out selling baby products. So I built the business in the May 2005. So this is still only a couple of months after I started the business. An application for Dragon's Den came up on my little computer. It was only the 2nd series. And I just thought, oh, I loved that. I'll apply. I thought nothing of it. And within 2 weeks, I was stood in front of the Dragons pitching Truly Madly Baby. So that's kind of what, I smile as I say it, because I think complete madness, really, when you think, wasn't it? Luckily, Theo Paphitis and Peter Jones saw something. I think it must have just been my passion and my excitement about it all. And they were pitching against each other to invest. And Peter Jones was the one I shook hands with on the filming. But then 6 months goes by before you actually put it out to the public to watch the program. So a long time goes by. Contracts had come in. They weren't great. My solicitor had said, don't sign them. So I didn't. So by the time it was actually shown, I hadn't done the deal with Peter. We had about 2,500 emails drop into the inbox that night when it was on the telly. And a few of them were for investment opportunities if it hadn't gone through. And one of the ladies I actually knew. So I'd got this lady offering investment. She was a financial director. So that was really good, because that wasn't my thing. I was sales. And I met her, I knew her, I played hockey with her, I met her, and we did the deal. So she became my business partner. And then I carried on running the business for 3 years, just building it. It was a whirlwind. We grew hugely, having been on the telly, and it was very exciting. But I said to you before, Olivia, I was 20 hours a day, 7 days a week working in this business. So I was wearing all hats, just trying to do everything I could. And by year 3, we'd got 432 consultants across the country doing Truly Madly Baby parties. We'd hit the 1 million. We'd got profit in the business. It was absolutely wonderful. And we had inquiries from America, Australia, and Europe, to go global. So all of this was really, really exciting. But there was 2 really fundamental things. The one was I was knackered, because I have to say that so anyone who's listening realizes I was completely burnt out.
Yeah.
But the second thing was that we hadn't put the foundations in place to deal with the growth that we'd had. And when you grow so quickly, you've got to have things like stock, staff, systems, you know, the 3 S's really.
Yeah.
We hadn't got those in place to support the amount of business we've got coming in. So we had to have a discussion to say we need another level of investment so that we can get all of this in place. And the deal was uncapped investment, but 75% share of your business. And I think if you can imagine having been working so hard for all that time, for somebody to say they want 75% of your business, when you'd got a deal that was 42-58, you know, split.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me at all. And so I said no. But it was detrimental in that the fact that she had the money, she kind of had the power over that side of the business, and the business couldn't support itself cash flow wise because we just couldn't manage the output with the input. And so ultimately she put us into administration, and then she bought the business back herself a few days later and continued to run it, and I lost everything.
Wow. So, as you know, like I deal with the mental health side of like entrepreneurship, and that is classed as a trauma.
Yeah.
And I know you've had many traumas in your lifetime, but that is a very serious thing. I think. What was it you were saying earlier on? You didn't realize how much it was a big blow, to put it mildly, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was. And I think that for me, to understand the trauma of this was the fact that I'd started the business because of the birth of my son.
Yeah.
So this business was completely and utterly connected to Sam.
Yes.
And of course, you know, when you're a parent, and you'll understand this, it's unconditional love. You'll do anything for your child. And so the connection of that to my business was actually, it made it feel like a grief.
Wow.
When I lost my business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to describe it. I'm able to talk about it like this looking back on it, but at the time I probably didn't realize that that's what it felt like. Yeah. But it was like I had actually lost something physical, and connected with my son. So it was a huge trauma. Yeah, it was.
Lots of people say like the business is my baby, and because it was business baby related anyway.
Yeah.
Very personal thing to you.
Yeah.
To have it being taken away in effect.
Yeah.
Is a big blow.
Yeah, and I think there's also something else to say. You know, this doesn't mean that I did everything right in the business. You know, I didn't. I did a lot of things wrong that I could have done better, for sure. And that's what entrepreneurship is actually all about. You know, this kind of, you need to fail in essence to learn. So, you know, there's a huge amount of stuff that I would probably do different if I did it again. That's great. But it was the fact that I was left with no choices at the end of it all. After 3 years of really hard work, trying to build something that was really special, I think that was painful. That I was helpless. It was almost like out of my control that it happened at the end.
And that is a feature of like a traumatic event, is the person feels powerless to do anything, whether it's like a physical attack or whatever. And I think in a way it does kind of put you into a freeze state, whether it's like physical, in some cases people that get physically attacked, but also like on some level mentally, it's just like stunned. You can get stunned by it, can't you?
Yeah, I think I was definitely numb. I remember a feeling of that numbness, and I think I was probably slightly in shock, because I think that's the other thing. Shock's a very strange thing, and how it manifests itself. Yeah. And I think for sure that I'd experienced those things after it happened.
Absolutely. I love what you say about like looking back and saying, yeah, there was things I could have done differently. And this is the thing that sometimes I work with entrepreneurs who have made a mistake or have like trusted the wrong people. This is a big feature I see a lot of. People have trusted the wrong people. And then it's like, how do you move on? Like, how do you like learn the lessons and not keep completely bitter? Like we talked about that when I was at Cass Business School last week, like how they say, Mike Southern, who's like the lecturer there, said like the best revenge is a happy life, you know.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and there are so many cases of where entrepreneurs have, you know, a business partner has done something, or they've been defrauded or cheated or whatever, where they have to find a way of moving on. Otherwise it kills them. Like,
Yeah.
I've known people get, one guy lost his business, got completely shafted, and ended up abusing alcohol and cocaine because he just couldn't take it.
Yeah,
And then
and
it
that's
led other
sad.
problems. Yes.
That's really sad, isn't it? Because then it becomes your problem, that is then ongoing. I
Yeah, but
think
yeah.
you remember in the TEDx talk, there was this really lovely moment where, sorry, excuse me. In the TEDx talk, there was this really lovely moment where I said to the audience, my mum said, you don't have to do a thing, karma will prevail.
Yeah.
And those words are just ringing my ears, because that's exactly what my mum said, in a very calm way, because that's how she was. And she was right, because if you hold on to this terrible energy where you feel shafted and upset and it's not fair, if you stay in that place of being a victim, you can't move on ever. You just can't move on. So I think for me, it was about being able to rebuild my life. That was my priority.
Yes.
And that's what allowed me to move away from wanting revenge. It's not fair. Why me? And all of that emotion. And that's what happened for me, I think. It was about, right, okay, what's next? What do I need to do now?
Yeah.
That was what was really important, because I've got Sam. Sam was tiny baby still, really. 3 he was.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a huge amount of sense. And I know that, I mean, apart from losing the business, you also ended up losing other things and people
Yeah,
along the way.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, it was quite close together that stuff happened. So,
yeah,
you know, I like to sort of say, really, it's normal life stuff, which
yes,
is that humble side of me, because it is. We all experience loss, but it was the way it all seemed to happen on top of each other that was quite tough.
exactly. And one thing you say in the TEDx talk that really stuck with me was that you ended up losing your mother, and
Yeah,
you weren't able, you didn't have the space to grieve, which then
no.
came and bit you on the ass, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it did. So I think, obviously, I had a miscarriage. I then we had diagnosis of mum's breast cancer. That was literally a couple of months after losing the business.
Yeah.
And then the following March, my husband left. So, you know, I was 40 years old, single, bankrupt, unemployed, with my mum poorly. It was all really difficult. It was almost like, oh my God, you know, actually what's next? I was almost waiting for the next thing, I think, to come.
Yeah.
We lost mum actually another couple of years later, from a different cancer, actually. But whoever knows, they may have been related. But when I did, you're right, my dad was brokenhearted. I adored my dad. He was a big part of my journey and my life. And I had to look after him. I had a team that I was heading up in sales in my job. They were struggling to hit target. I was looking after them. I was looking after Sam. It was almost like everybody was okay. I had to make sure everybody was okay except for me. And I didn't grieve for 6 months when I lost my mum. I didn't cry for 6 months. And then, as you saw in the talk, I just collapsed in the shower this one day, sobbing uncontrollably, which was quite bizarre. But again, that was that shock catching up with you, and realizing I wasn't going to see her again, you know.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge thing. I remember years ago I was treating a woman, and she'd been pregnant, and then her beloved father had died just before the baby had been born, and she never grieved. And people would say to her, cheer up, you've got a lovely baby now, you know. And like, I was treating her, and this was like child was like 12, and she just burst into tears because she'd literally been carrying that stuff.
Yeah.
And often there is this feeling of like loyalty, and like you say, you're trying to take care of other people. And sometimes, even though people like you are obviously incredibly strong, but that doesn't mean that you don't have your limits, right?
No, that's
Uh,
right. Absolutely.
so, and this is what happened. This is what happened with you. So, in a way, like, do you think you've obviously lost a huge amount? Do you think you sort of? It seems to me like you've kind of grieved, and you really have come to terms with the loss of the business, which is like the first, really, that was the first loss, wasn't it, that you had?
Yeah, it was. And it was really interesting how many people said to me, oh, start up again. You can start up again against her, you know. And it was so funny when I look back how many people desperately wanted me to just start up again, you know, and
Get
do
back.
it all again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely exhausted, you know, and I realized actually by stopping how tired and burnt out I'd become. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you know, part of the, I guess the therapy around it was a huge influence of my mum, as mentioned. But
Yes.
just that getting back up, going and getting a job, bringing some sort of normality back into my life, a purpose, a reason. I think all of that helped me to recover from losing this business and accept. I mean, acceptance is the big bit in anything, in
Yes.
grief particularly. Once you get to acceptance, then you start to be able to move forward much easier.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. It happened. But today, what's so wonderful is I can look at it and think, oh my goodness, how much did I learn? And
Yeah.
how much can I now help other people because of what I went through? So it's just so wonderful now, isn't it?
Yeah, that is brilliant. Exactly what you say. Like, it's like, I think giving yourself the space to grieve and to acknowledge what you've lost, like, accept your own part in what's happened, and then try and learn the lessons and move on. But you can't do all that really, really quickly. That takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does take time. And, you know, don't ever think that you don't have dips in between, because you do.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's ongoing work, if I'm really honest with you.
Yes.
I genuinely do. And I think it's understanding the patterns, understanding how you feel, and having the tools to deal with those moments.
Yes.
There's
Exactly.
lots of tools, as you know, because you're a therapist.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you can educate yourself around this journey,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the biggest thing you'll do, because that's what will get you through it, I think.
Yeah. So did you, I know some entrepreneurs feel that their friends don't really understand it, because the friends don't understand what it's like to run your own business. They
Yeah.
haven't got a clue what it's like to carry. We talk about this emotional load that people carry, like there is so much to think about, and you can't, probably when you sleep, you don't even switch off, you know, your brain is
Yeah.
probably, so do you have friends who like truly understand what it's like to run a business?
I lost friends actually in my journey. I lost some really good friends. And I think part of that was that they couldn't really cope with the journey I was on, because I was going through so much loss. I don't think they knew what to do next with me. And
I,
so they stepped away, which was quite interesting. And we'd been very good friends. And I think there were moments in that journey where they were massively supportive. When I lost my dad, for instance, I had amazing friends around me. But
yeah.
not long after that, I had a couple of other losses, and it was almost like, oh, I just can't deal with any more loss with her. It felt like that, you know. And I think my biggest allies and friendships now are actually from meeting people in the online space,
Mm.
because, you know, they have been definitely like-minded. They get it. They get the entrepreneurial journey. And we have made effort to meet up where we can. So when you suddenly meet someone in real life, having met them online, it's like you've known them forever.
Yeah.
You know, it's really quite special. So I think some of my best friendships have actually been made since in the last, say, 3 years, really, doing this.
Wow.
And I've lost friends along the way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I hear all the time. It
Well,
is.
what's the saying, Olivia? There's a saying which is, friends are for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
very true, I think.
very, very true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of my fellow entrepreneurs, we're talking about this off camera, was working on her business so much she didn't have any money for food. She would literally eat porridge in the morning with water and then lentils. And that's what she literally lived off for months and months and months. Do you have any similar stories of, like, I know that you were bankrupt at some point. Do you have any
Yeah.
ridiculous stories of like how hard up you were? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fortunate in that at the time I had support from my ex-husband. Obviously, he was my husband for a while after
Yeah,
the bankruptcy, but then he was my ex-husband, and he always supported in terms of paid the mortgage for some time for us. And,
yeah.
you know, so I had support there. I've got less support now, actually, which is more interesting because running this business, I think I feel under even more financial pressure because I have no mum and dad now. I
Yeah.
don't have any other family really. I've got some cousins, but I rarely see them. So I feel quite alone now, I
Wow.
think financially, more
Yes.
than I ever did. And so I am the breadwinner, you know,
Yes.
whereas before, you know, I did have, Richard was there, and obviously, you know, for a while my mum and dad were around to support me as well. But now it is literally, it is me. And when that's done, then there's nothing else, nowhere else to go, if that makes sense.
I've
So I
got
think
you.
now's actually more poignant.
Wow, that's really interesting. I know that you've
Yeah.
written a book about sales, which I told you that I bought a few months ago, and it's on my bookshelf. So I need to grab a hold of that copy because I know that you're. So after you went bankrupt, you got a job in sales. You smashed lots of targets, and now you help other people with their sales. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. So I think going back to work after I'd lost the business, it was like going back 10 years because I went back to do something I'd done like years and years ago. So it's quite hard on my ego. But what I learned was that I could still sell. I learned about how I was actually really doing it. And it wasn't how I was trained to do it. I was going out and just actually being me, having human conversations, creating relationships, just being very true, unique me.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, and that actually has meant I was successful. Well, that's interesting because that's not how they teach you to sell. So I always had that in my mind. And then I was a head of sales, and then I also had sales director experience. So I've got this wonderful breadth of knowledge around sales, which
Yeah.
I didn't have before, which now means that I can teach people looking at it from a really big picture place, knowing so much more about sales. So I created my own methodology because I just didn't like how we were teaching people to sell.
Mm-hmm.
It was robotic and it was anonymous and scripted.
Yeah.
So I created Live It, Love It, Sell It, which I've trademarked, and I've got UHP now, which I've also trademarked, and that's unique human proposition, because the USP stuff that we always used to talk about in sales, it's all about people now. It's always has been, but it's about us uniquely being us, and that's how we stand out from the crowd.
That's very true. Like, so after I watched your TEDx talk, I felt I knew you already. Right?
That's lovely.
And now, like, having chatting to you is like I've known you for years. You know, it's just
Oh,
so is that part of the UHP? Is that
yeah,
uniqueness? Um,
yeah,
that's really interesting. So when because I'm like a Harley Street therapist and stuff, like a part of me thinks, oh, I should be really serious and stuff, but I'm not like that in real life. So is that
no,
part of my UHP? Is that my
absolutely.
personality is a part of
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Olivia. There is no other Olivia on the planet, okay? That's
that?
just a fact,
Yeah.
okay? So, what I really want to do in businesses is look at a sales team and not say, oh, you know, what targets are we hitting and why aren't we hitting them? I look at a sales team and I say, who have we got in this team? What's their strengths? What's their personality? How are they going to connect with our customers? Who's best for the job in which sector? And I look at all of that as opposed to the numbers and the process and the scripts. So I'm making human connections. And then your team is like no other sales team in the world because they're your unique humans, you know, and I think this is absolutely the way to stand out from the crowd today.
Mm. So, who's your like? Do you have like people say you have an ideal client avatar.
Yeah,
Do you have
yeah,
like,
yeah.
who's your like ideal client for your sales work?
Yeah, so because I've got Live It, Love It, Sell It. That's the book, and obviously that's like a solopreneur, entrepreneur type of product. So these are the guys who have potentially never sold before, or they might just be starting their businesses, or they just hate sales, So those guys are my Live It, Love It, Sell It clients. And then the UHP clients are definitely the SME market. So these companies who have started to get a team of salespeople, whether it's 2 or 10 or 50, I don't really mind, but they're the people that I want to work with. They're sales managers and their teams. And their product foundation is exactly the same principles of the sales road trip, as I call it, which you'll see in the book, which is about mindset, planning, and being human.
Nice. I look forward to seeing more about it. So, do you like go around and speak about your work? Are you a speaker? Well, obviously you're a speaker, but like, do you go out and speak as part of your getting yourself out there?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's been really interesting since TEDx. I've really propelled as a speaker, which has been awesome. I did lots of speaking after Dragon's Den, but I was like a rabbit in the headlights. They just wanted me because I'd been in the den, and I never knew what I was really doing. Whereas now I have much more structure and I understand what speaking's about. So it's lovely to go out and speak now. It really is.
Good. So, do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about starting a business or running a business? Is it like just don't do it?
Do you know what? I would never say to someone don't do it, because I think that if you want to have a go at it, absolutely have a go at it, but just understand what it really is about. Because I think there are a lot of people who start businesses, but they don't usually end businesses, if that makes sense. They don't usually carry on with it or end up growing it even. It's very tough to do this stuff. But there's 2 things. The first thing is that it's usually going to be the fact that you're doing something you really love. And I think that's really, really important. So I would say, yes, definitely start a business, but make sure it's doing something you love. But just understand what it is you want from it and how you need to structure it. Who is your market? Who's going to buy from you? And how are you going to get yourself out there as uniquely you? It's all of that, which actually I cover a lot in the book. So I wouldn't ever say don't do it, but just be aware of what it's really all about, and also how hard it is, because you'll have times where you'll wonder why you started it, but you'll have other times where you know exactly why you started it.
I love it. I love it. Wow. So is there anything else?
Well, I guess we could just say that, my dad always said there's no such word as can't, didn't he? Because we talk about that in my TEDx.
You do.
I watched my dad from when I was a little girl selling. He ran a newsagents in the local precinct shops, and I watched him and I learned so much just about selling from him, in how he loved his customers, how he knew who they were, how he asked them how they were, how he had their stuff ready on the counter when they came in because he knew what they bought. And all of those things for me is what business and selling is all about. That personal human experience and that connection. And if you get that bit right, I think anyone can actually have a really enjoyable business. If they become millionaires, fantastic, but it's about just loving what you do. That's the real thing for me. That's my message all the time. So yeah, there's no such word as can't, because that's what you always used to say to me.
It's so good. It's like such a brilliant legacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of personal connection, not this thing of like you just make 100 calls, like bang through the script, that's obviously not what you're about, but this is what people are told, right?
Yeah, they are. And I think it's just about being really smart with your activity, and as I say, just be real. People are connecting about who you are these days, not what it is that you sell and how much it is. It's about you as the connection.
Definitely. Wow, thank you so much. Well, I think we've run through. We could probably talk for a lot longer, but I think we've run through your story and the basic advice and what you're doing now. So I'm really, really glad that you agreed to come and speak to me this morning. And where can people get hold of you finally?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's always lovely to just chat with new people, and if it helps one person who's listening, then that would be amazing, wouldn't it? That's how I see it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you want to get me, I think honestly, just remember, live it, love it, sell it. That's pretty much where I am across most of the platforms. And my website is liveitloveitsellit.co.uk, and on there is everything about what I do. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you.
Thank you.